Today we're answering subscribers' questions and comments about monitors. And this is going to be an unboxing of an ASUS ProArt model PA278QV, Calman verified. And this is for entry-level color correction and color grading. So as we go through the details, we need to look at the specs on this monitor. We'll point out some features, what it does not do, and how it lines up with those specs I've just defined. And I have a third set of specs I'm going to throw in with this as it relates to how this monitor can be mounted, not just a base, but also not just a wall, but to a stand. That's the VESA mount. I'll get more into that. So let's go ahead, get this up, and do an unboxing. Now, everything around me, I'm clear of other electronics. So I'm going to point that out because normally when I'm concerned about ESD, I glove up. And there will be some ESD that comes off of this monitor, but all the other electronics are pretty well isolated. Hopefully we won't need anything. Oh, and by the way, I want to thank one of our subscribers for making this possible. Thank you, Sherilyn. I appreciate it for having this monitor sent to us. Okay, one of the cables that we're going to be talking about, we'll pull that out first, power supply cable. And that's one of the questions I want to answer that comes up on Amazon. This takes a regular standard power supply cable. The power supply is built into the monitor, for those that are wondering. There's also a USB hub built into the monitor. We'll go through that. So the first cable I pulled out is the USB hub AB cable, the end that plugs into the monitor, and of course then the end that plugs into the computer. The next cable I pulled out, the power supply cable that I've mentioned. The third cable I just pulled out of the top is an HDMI cable. Now, you notice the size of that cable. I have thinner HDMI cables that I prefer to use, so I will probably not use this, but it's an HDMI cable that comes with it. And those are the three cables in the top. Next, we have to pull the plastic out, the styrofoam. We'll have the monitor, and as we pull that out, apparently that's the face of the monitor. Feels like it's protected. I'll lay that on the table. The support arm on the back is already attached, so we'll need to clean all that off. Also in the box, the base that we'll need to attach. I like the size of that, nice and big. I'll set that up here. And then we have the literature. 1, 2, 3. And that's everything in the box. So I'll take the styrofoam. And of course, always remember, when you buy something new, you want to hang on to whatever packaging contents you've got that's good for the life of the warranty. If it's 30 days, 1 year, whatever it is. Because if for some reason you've got a product, you've got to send it back, you're going to need that packaging, or else you've got to buy packaging. So keep all that stuff until the warranty period has expired. Okay, the literature we've got. We'll get the little stuff out of the way. We have the ASUS VIP member notice, where you can record information about the model, read about service centers, the warranty. Then a ProArt documentation, looks like a certificate about it being Calman verified. We'll get more into that verification process in a minute. And there's the manual, or the documentation, the flyer, the leaflet that tells us how to attach the base and talks about the connections. We'll go over that as we look at it here in a minute. But I want to itemize everything we've got to make sure we have everything we need. And then this is the certification sheet. I've tried to position everything in terms of the lighting. I had to make some changes to minimize the glare, which I still have some of. I've got some other things to do with the lighting to eliminate that. But I've spent quite a deal of time trying to minimize glare and hopefully get rid of the shadows that were behind me until I can do what I would like to do. It's going to take me a lot more time to process. Okay, this is the color calibration testing report. This monitor is good to go out of the box, which is good to know. Gives us the gamma results, also the color accuracy. It's 0.33, which is exceptionally good. Shows us the curve for the delta E, shows us the brightness, the gamma value, which would be the nits, and this goes up to, I expected this monitor to be brighter. This gets up just a little over between 250 and it looks like 300 nits. I was in hopes that it was at least 800 because that's another feature I'll bring up in a minute. And then, of course, grayscale tracking. And the test equipment, they used a Minolta color analyzer. And remember, this is entry level. Typically, when you're going to do color correction, I'll put a link up to a couple of colorimeters, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But this shows the Minolta color analyzer CA310 that they used. And the color accuracy, average delta, E, is less than 2. And this comes in at 0.33. Now, because this is an entry-level monitor, to do what we're talking about, I'll go through the specs here in just a minute. The first thing you want to look for in a monitor to do this kind of work is a wide color gamut. So the first thing we're looking for is Rec 709. I'm not going to get into the definitions of all that. You can look all that stuff up. And there's some things I'm going to mention that are going to require another video if we go down that road. Because every question we answer, always one question answered brings up 10 more. But anyway, Rec 709. You could do a search for Rec 2020, but you will eliminate a lot of possibilities that you might want to look at. So, wide color gamut, Rec 709. The next thing we want to know, this monitor, and we'll look at it as we go down the specs, 100% sRGB. Now, if Adobe RGB is a big deal, this may not be the monitor that you want to go with. This will do Adobe RGB. We'll look at the specs, but it's not a 100%, or excuse me, a 99.8% Adobe RGB. Another issue would be Pantone. If you want Pantone color matching, this is probably not the monitor you want. Remember, the key to this is entry level. If you're just getting started, this is a 27-inch monitor, and what I'm always looking for, I want a monitor that is at least 1080. Okay, this is beyond 1080. As we look at the specs, and I'll go to Amazon and show you the link. This particular monitor is a 27-inch, but it is not 1080. It can do 1080. That's one of the questions that get asked. The default native resolution for this is 1440, so it would classify as 2K. Now, to go from 1080, if you're going to get serious about color and you're looking at HDR 4K, you want to go to a 4K monitor. I'll show you. Also, entry-level 4K, you can go to a 27-inch, but I'd suggest for 4K, take it up to a 32-inch. And in the ASUS ProArt line, they can take you all the way into a professional monitor. But the things this does not do, it does not do scopes unless you have the software like the Blackmagic that you can look at on this monitor. But the monitor does not do scopes built within itself. This monitor also does not have the ability to do reverse colors. For those that know what I'm talking about, you understand that. That's also something, a separate video. This is entry-level color correction and color grading. This is not a studio monitor. This is not a reference monitor. This is, once you get past editing and you're going to start doing color correction and color grading, you got to make sure what you're looking at, everything looks right. This is where you start. And you start with a monitor that's been calibrated, Calman verified, but the next step is to take a monitor like this, get a colorimeter, we'll put up a couple links, and do your color correction. Now, your higher end monitors will have a hood on 3 sides because you're always concerned about ambient light. So with this, we don't have that. This is also not a monitor you would use in studio for like a reference monitor for like a client, because that you'd want a monitor that's about 1500 to 2000 nits. Based on what we just read, this looks like it's about 250 nits. It's not a real bright monitor, but as bright as it is, I'll imagine once we turn it on, I'm going to need to turn it down because it may be too bright for me for what I do in the environment that I'm at. And color over time will change. Another reason for a colorimeter. And if you have 2 of these set up, you definitely want to go back and color match them yourselves because they're going to be off. What one looks like and what one looks like as you look across them, but as you put them side by side, that's when you'll see the difference. So that's a next step. Now, another question people ask, and this can be figured out either mathematically or through the specs, because this is a LCD IPS, what's the dot pitch? We can get that from the specs. And as I mentioned, the nits or the brightness, we too can get that from the specs. If the vendor's not telling us, which it showed in the chart, there's a test we can run that when I get to, there's a couple of tests you might want to run on your monitor to see how bright it is. And if you want to check out some of the other stuff, like the EDID information. But that too is a separate video, but I'll get to those tests. And everything I mentioned I'll have links so you can look at that in the description of this video. So what we got to do now is let's take the plastic off. And I got to tell you, I'm not experiencing static electricity from this like I expected, like you usually get when you handle styrofoam or any of that kind of stuff. But I still got to peel the face off. So let's take a look at this arm, because that's another question that comes up about this. Let's go overhead. This monitor can rotate portrait and landscape, which is an interesting feature for this type of monitor. Now there's a button here, see if I can come in on this, that locks this arm for portrait and landscape. So if I want to rotate it, I push that button in to unlock, and that lock actually removes this base. And while I'm at it, now I'll tell you about the other specs. That is your bolt pattern for your VESA mount. And the VESA mount, I'll put this back in, is the one thing I look at for all monitors, and this just rotates right around. You'll feel detente where it clicks. Let me go ahead and get this styrofoam off. So if I use the base, I can't use the VESA mount. And the advantage of the VESA mount, and this is where I take issue with the vendors. In the description, they talk about this as mounting for a wall mount. Yes, it can be, but that's not the only place. We've got a couple of videos behind the scenes under my name, Gil Boyd, but I haven't done anything under BuildOrBuy about that technology. But that is of tantamount importance for any monitor I use. It's got to have a VESA mount. Now, VESA mount defines the size of the monitor based on the weight, based on a bolt pattern. 75 by 75 millimeter. For this, it's 100 by 100 millimeter. Could be for a larger monitor, for a larger plate, 200 by 200 millimeter. And all the monitors I use, even when I've had them on the video cart, I had the ability for all the monitors to be able to VESA mount them. But to do it with this monitor, this base, because the way it's designed, has to be taken off to be able to mount that. So I just want to point that out, because we're going to use the base, lock that back in, and that is a nice base. One issue I have had, and I'll give you a list of some other monitors you might want to look at, was an LG monitor. That was a beautiful monitor, but it had that kind of a crescent moon shaped base, and if it's not on a flat solid surface, had that happen. Before I could get that thing mounted to the VESA mount, that thing flipped, and I've never had a monitor get destroyed, but that one got destroyed. I was pretty bummed about it, and I have not purchased another LG monitor since then because of that, because I don't have time for fragile. Now what's nice about this is the way this base is going to fit, and this is a nice square base. I say square, probably more rectangular, and you can kind of see the two pins. These look like lead, and on the bottom how that has a screw hold on to it. It passes right through there to screw that into the base. I want to turn this around and see if we can get a better look at how that's going to mount. Yeah, that's pretty good. So that and that are going to fit together. And this is slightly off center. This base, that is slightly off center. It shows a mark here in the center and the front. So this will rotate, and yes, it's tight, but that will rotate left and right. And also, once we get it up, it'll be more apparent. So we're going to take that and mount those two together, right like that. Trying to give you guys the best view so you can see what this does and how it works. Nice base, substantial, with one center locking screw. Lock that down, flip that over. Now we can stand that up, see if that gives you a better view. And take this off. Good looking. I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with the base. It has a tilt to it. It slants back. See if I can get a good picture of that. Yeah, that's a good view. You can see right there how that tilts back, and you can see the base, and it has gradient markings all around. So as we turn it around, nice looking. Looks like a piece of tape on the back. Oh, that's just where the label's at for ASUS. So we'll peel that off. Yeah, it's just to protect that from scratches. Now we're looking at the back of the monitor. So from this side, we have an on-off switch. Power plugs in right here. Turn that up so you can see it. Right there, on-off switch, power plug. So as you look at it, it'll be on the right side for the power switch, the plug, and then you can see the connections. And this button right here is what unlocks the back to remove the stand. And right here we can examine the connections that are in this monitor. DVI, HDMI, DisplayPort, mini DisplayPort, audio in and audio out. And then this is for the USB hub that plugs to the computer. And there's the 2 ports to plug stuff into once the hub is activated. But you got to plug the cable in. So you have to remember, yes, there's speakers built into this. That's another one of the features. Audio will follow video with HDMI and DisplayPort, so you'll want to be sure and you're using something else for speakers. I hear some people get upset about speakers built into a monitor. If you're looking at a monitor that's got speakers into it, you're looking at speakers for the wrong reasons. The speakers are there, but don't expect them to do anything. Remember, this is about entry-level color correction and color grading. That's what we're focused on. And it's a 27-inch monitor. It's got some weight to it. It's heavier than I expected it to be. My favorite monitor is ViewSonic. I have more of those than any other monitor over the years. In fact, the last monitor we took a look at was a Dell that I use as a multi-view monitor. It's a 1080 resolution, but it's huge for the multi-view on the video switch. So I can see 2, 4, 6, I can see 8 inputs, and I can see the primary and the secondary mains. That's maybe another video sometime, but I'm just telling you, it's been a while since we looked at a monitor. It was time to do this. And if we get a chance to go up the food chain, we'll see, while we're waiting on CPUs and chipsets. But we talked so much about video cards, I thought it was time we talk about a monitor. Now, this is not a high-end monitor, but for entry-level color correction and color grading, it's a good place to start. And then as you move up the food chain, you're looking at a colorimeter that's going to probably cost about the price of the monitor starting out. In fact, the last time we looked at colorimeters at BuildOrBuy, we did that during a live meeting. And I had several people want me to come color match their big screen 4K TVs. Separate discussion. But needless to say, we looked at colorimeters before. In fact, the one that I used to use, because the hardware changed, I could not upgrade the software to it, because the colorimeter takes the hardware, the hockey puck that goes on the monitor, and then the software to do the grading. Yes, you can grade a monitor without a hockey puck, but this is as low as I go. If you want accuracy, you need the hockey puck, the colorimeter. But yes, it's doable. I've done it. What I didn't like about the colorimeters is that you have to put that suction cup on the monitor, and the last time I did that, I didn't like the spot it left, and I couldn't get it clean. That was very annoying. And if you're really into color, that's something that you've got to check throughout the day, because throughout the day color changes. I think that's the thickest padding I've ever had on a monitor. And we've got a sticker up here. Yeah, we're still going to get some glare. Not much I can do about it. But I worked quite a bit trying to eliminate the glare that you see today. And I've got more still to do, but it takes time to do that. It's not just one camera with 3 lights. There's 4 cameras on here today. And I've shot with as many as 6. But I'm doing this, I'm hoping to make it easy for you guys to see. So the little tag here on the front, I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to take that off. It tells it's IPS, 2560 by 1440 ProArt display, and the model PA278QV. The 27 is the size, 27 inch. Talks about the base. As you can see, we can rotate that just about any way we want to go with it. And as I turn it here, you can see how that tilts. And the base by nature tilts back, which is pretty slick. It has a nice balance to the weight. In other words, this is not going to tilt over on this base. But to add versatility, VESA mount. Now, I've taken the VESA mount a step further, and I might do it again in another video, because there's a lot of there's a whole new slew of products out for VESA mounts. But the problem with VESA mounts, you see how close this mount, this base, this stand is to the back of the monitor? Most VESA mounts stick out. If you are mobile and need to transport a monitor, you have to take all that off. So we went a step further, and we found a quick release for the VESA mount, so we could have just a plate that stuck out about a ½ inch. Take that, disconnect it, your VESA mount's intact, click it back on, and it rests according to the weight of the monitor. Beautiful, ingenious. Took quite a while to figure all that out. If you know what you're looking for, it's easy to find, but if you don't, You can't just do one search for one keyword phrase and find what I'm talking about. And since I've mentioned it, I'll put up some links in the description so you can know more about it. Okay, this little sticky they've got on here, fortunately it's just on the plastic. Piece of double-sided tape on the top, and I'm going to pull this tag off the side. Now, two other concerns people have about this monitor. One about light bleed, which we kind of addressed. This does not have the it doesn't have the cover around for three sides. This is entry level. Another issue some have had is with dead pixels or stuck pixels. And I'm not going to get into a whole description about that, but what we'll do is we'll turn it on, see what we've got, see how it looks, and then we'll run a couple of tests. And I'll share those tests with you. They're all easy to download, easy to find, if you know what you're looking for. So of the cables that are included, which there are three, one for USB, one for power, one for HDMI. I'm not going to use their HDMI cable. I'm going to use our HDMI cable, which is a SANUS cable. And since I've mentioned it, I'll put up a link to it. I'm not a big fan of HDMI in terms of the quality of the connection, but everything we do goes SDI to the video switch. So everything has to be converted from HDMI to SDI. I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, I use these SANUS cables because they give me the quality without being such a heavy cable. I've tried to use ultra thin. I have found some ultra thin. These SANUS cables, of which I label so I know the connections where they're at, I believe get up to about 7 feet. I tell you this to let you know, stay away from red mirror cables. Those are hit or miss. That too is a whole nother discussion. But I'm telling you about the HDMI because I'm not going to use it because that's a stiff cable. I don't like a stiff cable on stuff like this because it puts extra weight on the connection. And I don't want to do that. Just a standard power supply cable. And remember this USB cable, I'm okay with this. But remember the hub that's built in here is a 2-port hub. I point that out because I would not plug in something like a drive and think you're going to get power to it. I would plug it in directly to the computer. But if you're plugging in like a thumb drive, something that doesn't require a lot, in other words, I wouldn't plug a Pro Audio USB interface into the hub on this. I think you would create more problems for yourself from noise. That too is another discussion. Okay, I'm going to lay this back down. I'll plug in the power. Now this monitor is supposed to be able to sense multiple connections. In other words, whatever is connected, it'll auto-sense it. If you decide to plug in, say, 2 computers to one monitor, it will auto-sense whichever one the first one is. And if you need it to go to the other connection, either you unplug it, it'll auto-sense and go over, or you just go to the buttons, which we'll get to, and tell it to use the other connection to see the other computer. While I have the monitor laying down, I'm going to go ahead and plug in the cable for the hub to make it easy for me to see what I'm doing. But I won't plug it into the computer until the computer's up and running. And the SANUS cables we use come in 2 lengths. I believe it's the shorty is I think a 3 feet, and I think the long one is 6 or 7 feet. I'll put up a link. I'm gonna go ahead and put that on the monitor because we're going to plug this in. Another question people ask, can I use this as a monitor with a laptop? Absolutely. People ask how? Well, HDMI. Now I'm going to turn this so that we can both see this and try to turn that so we get rid of the glare. Get the laptop up. First things first, we'll plug in the monitor to the UPS, and we have our buttons here in front, and we've also got marks across the front, gradations, that if we bring up the chart, it will show us grid lines. Okay, monitor's plugged in. First button here on the far right, we'll turn it on. See a little light come on. ASUS HDMI. Now, if I show you what's on this laptop, I have to go through a converter. I want to show you what's on the laptop based on the monitor, so we're going to go through a camera. Let's see how this is going to work. Well, I tell you, that glare is a funny thing to deal with. You would not believe how long I've been working trying to get rid of that. Easier said than done. You notice this is the HP Envy 17T. It's got a glossy display. You notice this has a flat display. Even though it has a little bit of glare from what I can see here, from what you see there, it looks flat. And I want to try to turn this, get as much of this as I can with the laptop. Now the monitor is turned on, so we're going to plug in HDMI to the laptop. It should enumerate the device. And there it is. Nice. Now, as I look at that, okay, there's a image there that I need to read that I can't see. And it says the first time you turn this on, there's a yes or no. ASUS in compliance with California Energy Commission. sRGB mode is suggested to meet the regulation requirements for better performance and experience. Would you like to switch to standard mode? I'm going to say yes to standard mode. First button down here on the monitor. Second button. Third button. And that turned the monitor up brighter. Well, that's good looking. It's not like I thought it was going to be. For sRGB, that looks really good. And I don't see any problems with bleed around the edge of the monitor, but I got lots of lights in this room here with me. So what I've done with the lights, again, to eliminate shadows and to try to eliminate the glare, it's a tricky subject. I know what I need to do, but it's going to take a week and a big expenditure to do what I've got to do with the lighting. Because with multiple cameras, you can't just position lights because of one camera. It's an overhead issue. Anyway, without getting more into that separate video, that looks pretty good. I like the way that looks. For entry-level color correction, this is that monitor, 27-inch. And again, if you want to go to 4K HDR, ASUS ProArt has one that can do that. But my suggestion, if you're going to go 4K, I would go up to 32-inch. And if you're about color correction, don't think about the price, because that's still entry-level. Monitors can get 10 times that price for color correction and color grading. And I'll also put up a link that will take you into ViewSonic that will give you a better description of those differences. Again, I have to do this with a camera on the monitor, because if I plug in a converter, whatever software I show you that's trying to look at the monitor will be looking at the converter, not the monitor. So I have to show you the monitor from a camera. I have to explain that. We have 6 more talking points we want to cover. Those 6, one of those being, we just realized as this spins around that the monitor, we have 4 ports, 2 of them right here on the side. And what we're going to do is we spin this around while I'm talking. We're going to plug that in so you can see how that looks to the computer. We're going to do it with the laptop. And I want you to get a view of how beautiful this monitor is. Yeah, that's a good view right there. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to lay the monitor down, because I think to keep this in the same plane that I'll get a better view on the monitor from the camera looking overhead. So that way, as we do all these 6 steps I want to walk through, you guys will get a better view. Third time is a charm. Let's see how that looks. Oh yeah, that's going to look a whole lot better. My goal is for us to see all of the monitor, but I want us to be able to see when I go to the control panel, and I also want us to be able to see when we go through these buttons. Now, as far as the USB hub that I'm getting ready to plug in, that we'll do the best we can based on proximity with a laptop. So what we're going to do is I'll put this on the monitor as I plug this in. I'm not going to do a dual screen. I want to keep it simple, because we should be able to see something where this device enumerates. And again, to reiterate, I would keep low-power devices plugged into this. Keyboard, mouse, that sort of thing. A great addition to a laptop. Sure makes the HP MD17T look fantastic. Okay, we'll see if we see some enumeration. I thought we might see something down here, and we did not. Okay, let's go to Control Panel. We'll go to Device Manager, and we should see something under USB. That's probably it right there. Let me unplug it and let's see if it goes away. Yeah, that was it. Okay, I'll plug it back in. Generic Super Speed USB 3 hub. Okay, that's it. That's what I wanted us to notice. Okay, number 1. Okay, now for number 2 is actually 2 parts. We're going to go to the website. We've got 2 downloads from ASUS. And yes, this link will be in the description. This is the ASUS ProArt display. Again, to reiterate, the PA278QV. We'll go to Support, Drivers and Tools. We're going to choose our operating system, Windows 10 64-bit. We have 2 items to download, the driver package and the utilities. Now, once we download these 2 applications, the first thing, the driver package is 2 parts. And it's going to also affect how the monitor is seen by Windows. So again, while we're at the device manager, let me show you. We'll go up the tree. And of course, our display adapter. These are the 2 display adapters that are in the HP Envy 17T. the primary, which is the Intel graphics, and then the NVIDIA, which is the secondary. And that's a whole nother conversation, which one's being seen. Under monitors, I've already installed, and this is the third time I've done this, because the first time I did it with the monitor standing up, and when I tried to spin it around with the camera, they weren't parallel perpendicular as they are now. So I didn't have a good view of this, so I've already installed this driver, but I want to go through this so you understand the process. Okay, what we did under monitors is we double-clicked the generic plug-and-play monitor. We went to driver, then we went to driver update, and then we did a search on a computer for the driver, which is under this particular path, and it's wherever you put the driver, which is the driver package we downloaded, which is this driver right here. Once that's downloaded, once the monitor is recognized specifically, two things happen. One, we have a driver for the monitor, which you're going to see, so I'll cancel that, which is the ASUS PA278QV. The second part of that is once we install the driver for the monitor, we also now have the ICC profile installed. I just want to show you the profile that it's now there as a result of this, doing those two things. But that's the way you install that driver for that monitor from Control Panel. I want to zip through this. So I'll close Device Manager, and let's take a look under Color Management. And if you'll notice, that profile is already selected for us. It's an ICM file. And if you notice here at the top, it shows the ASUS monitor on the Intel graphics, because that's the default. So that color profile is ready to go. Okay, so that part's set. Now the next part is the utility we downloaded right here. And that utility, let me close all this. That's as far as we're going to go in color management. To get any deeper into that, separate video. Remember, this is about entry level. And we're just getting this set up. We're just looking at the monitor. There's a whole lot more involved, but I want to keep this tight. So we'll close the control panel. I've installed the application, the utility, and that's the ASUS ProArt ChromaTune. So when I call that up, this gives us access to the presets, and I'm going to click through these. Right now it's on sRGB, and if you notice, that's Calman verified. If I go back to standard, the monitor gets brighter. When I go to sRGB, or which is Calman verified, to reiterate, or Rec 709, they look pretty much about the same. sRGB and Rec 709. Both of those are Calman certified. And I can also click Scenery, which brightens up the monitor. I have a User Mode 1, a User Mode 2, Reading, and a Dark Room. So I'll go back to sRGB, and the camera is going to adjust, even though it's set to automatically see a specific color temperature. So I don't want to get into that. All these are specifically set to stay, but they still have some drift in them. That's a whole nother topic, another discussion. But I wanted to show you this application, and as you execute the application, it allows you access to the presets from the buttons. Any customization has to occur from within these buttons. So of these 6 buttons, the primary button being the one on the far right, and then you have the LED, which is either on, off, or amber. And if it were amber, that means it's in standby. So I want to reiterate that fact. Standby is not a part of high performance. I would not have that in standby, either off or on. That's it. So this button, if I turn it off and then turn it back on right quick, monitor comes back on pretty quick, shows it's on HDMI, and voila. Give the camera a second, it comes back into focus, and we have display. Okay, these other buttons, which to me are reverse, number 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So I'm going to press each one of these buttons, starting with button number 6. I'll press each one of them 3 times. Now there's a series of menus here. I'm going to see if I can zoom in on this to show you, and I'll press each one again 3 times. If I can position this so we can get up on this. My goal is so you can see this a little bit better. Okay, I'll do it again. All right, if you'll notice, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 options. This is the 3rd time. 5 options. But if you notice down here, if I press that button a 2nd time, it controls something different. So I'll press it again, and now this gives me access to the blue light filter. Level 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once, twice, level 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. When that goes out, I'm going to press it one more time, which is 1, 2. And if you'll notice now, there's nothing active over that button, which is going to be on the next 4. Press it again. And if I press the button next to it with the X, it goes out. I'm pointing this out now as I go to button number 2, press it one time, I see the same menu, I press it a second time. To reiterate, first button, press it twice, blue light filter. Second button, X, press it once, press it twice, and I'm supposed to be able to get to the brightness, but that's not coming up this time because, and I'm trying to keep this where you can see this, right now I'm in sRGB. If I go to standard and I press this second button, I'm on the second button, I press it once, I press it twice, now I have access to brightness. My point is, there's only certain things you can do depending on the way this is set up. For example, again, when I go back to sRGB, when I press this second button twice, I don't have access to brightness. If I go to Rec 709, I press that second button, now I have access to brightness. So there are presets that let this software work with these buttons, but the primary control of the monitor is with the buttons. With the software, we're doing presets. Now, there's another aspect of the software. I'll go up here to App Sync. App Sync will let me set an application to sync with a particular application. Pretty straightforward. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just showing you the basics. Preferences, always on top, which is not selected. And I have these other 4 that are preset. Right-click menu on the desktop, which would be right-click. And if you notice right there, it says ASUS ProArt ChromaTune. That is what that is about. Task tray in the icon bar, right there is the task tray in the icon bar. And running at system startup, which it'll always be happening in the app sync messaging. That's also enabled. And it shows adjust this display, of which we have that one display and then the second one. And then there's a help menu. So I'm going to go back to color. I'll go back to, let's try scenery. And the button's a little easier to see. I'm on button number, I keep saying button number 2. Counting from the left, button number 6, button number 5, I'll press it once, twice, I have brightness. And you'll notice brightness is 100%. If I go to Rec 709, button number 5, once, twice, I have access to brightness. If I go to sRGB, button number 5, twice, nothing. Rec 709, button 5, once, twice, brightness. So it depends on where you're at, what you can do, and I want to show you how all that interacts. Okay, button 6, blue light filter, button 5, brightness, when we're in standard mode, but not in sRGB. And if I press it a third time, it's an X. Okay, if I go now to button 6, 5, number 4 gives me, and if you notice the way that looks, that is called quick fit. Press it twice, and that's quick fit. I have a ruler of which it'll put a grid up on. I'm not going to do that. Quick fit. I have ruler, alignment, A4 and B4. I'll cancel that. And now we'll go to the 6543, which was quick fit. Now let's go to number 2, 65432, once, and next time it gives me the menu, which is all this. I have the ProArt preset, standard mode, sRGB, Rec 709, scenery, reading, darkroom, rapid mode, and then there's more. Those are the scenes that I see within the software. I'll press the X to get rid of that menu so you can see how that all works, how those interact. Okay, 2 more applications. Now these other applications are more generic. One is specifically for an HDR monitor. This is not an HDR monitor. However, it will give us some information, basic, that I want to show you real quick. So we will close the ChromaTune program. Now this is the program that is the DisplayHDR test. It'll go full screen and everything is in the top left corner of the monitor. I'm hoping the camera will focus on this, but I may have to put my finger down there for it to see it. Yeah, like I said, to reiterate, this is the 3rd time I have done this, and the other 2 times the display was terrible because we weren't in the same plane. Okay, I'm going to leave that margin up. All right. I've taken this full screen. This is the VESA Display HDR compliance test. Now I'm not going to get into a big discussion about that, but a VESA display HDR compliant monitor is a big deal. I'll put up some information, but that's a whole separate conversation. But I'm going to run this test to show you some of what it provides. This is something you can do on your own monitor. Now, I'm going to move to the next page, which is page down on the laptop. So I'll page down. Now this says connection to display 1, connection bit depth 8, connection color space 0, sRGB. And it says before starting the test, make sure HDR in advanced mode is enabled in the display settings. And the monitor needs to have been on for about 30 minutes so it can warm up. This monitor has been on for 24 hours. And it'll show us values, and then when I check the next screen, it's going to tell us some of the information about the generics of the operating system, what it sees, but not specifics to the monitor. But there is one part that is specific, and that's what I want to point out. All right. Supported sRGB values, maximum effective, full frame, and minimum effective. 250, page down. Now, these are operating system provided defaults. Display did not provide any data. Okay, the one piece of data we get that I do know is accurate, where it talks about the gamut coverage based on reported primaries. Percentage of sRGB, 99.89. Percentage of Adobe RGB, 85%. Percentage of the DCI P3, 79%. Percentage of the BT dot 2100, 58. And percentage of the human eye, 33. This is again for HDR testing of a display, which we are not doing. But this is something you can run on your monitor and you can see what kind of results you get. Now, if we had an HDR display, 4K HDR, we'd run the full test, and this would give us more information. So I'm going to exit out of this by escape. And I want to go down to the next application, and I'll have a link in the description for this. I'm going to keep this kind of zoomed in, move the monitor over just a little bit. This is an application we use sometimes instead of BuildOrBuy Advisor because it gives us the ED/ID information of the monitor. And this is something that's good to know. I'm going to drag the application over so it kind of fits the window. This is information that's good to know for anybody that's interested. Gives us the model name, the manufacturer, the plug and play ID, gives us the serial number, which I think is nice, the manufacturer date, also tells us the ED/ID revision 1.3, RGB color, gives us the screen size, which is specifically 27.2 inches for those that want to know that, and shows how long it's been on, 68 hours, which is kind of fascinating. Okay. A lot of information. I want to keep this tight. We've gone through the USB. We've got the hub working. We have 4 ports, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the side. We went through the application with the driver. The monitor is seen specifically, which also installed the color profile. Pretty cool. We went through the application that interacts with the buttons, so we kind of did 2 things there at once. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. My name's Gil Boyd. This is BuildOrBuy. Welcome, and we look forward to seeing you next video. We're out.